my car.
Just go get it.
Yeah.
I was serious.
Nah, it'll take me like 5 minutes to get back.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Monday, June 20th. Happy birthday, Mom. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. We've got an easy one today and sort of like the perfect size slate. 8 games, easy to break down, nothing too crazy. Don't have to deal with every single player in the league being on the slate. So that is helpful. Before we do anything, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how was your weekend? Congrats to us for having an excellent Father's Day.
Yeah, great time. Didn't have to deal with any kids. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, it was good. Went to those game yesterday with my mom, which is obviously counterintuitive. Barely saw my dad. We're doing Father's Day things next weekend, but
Gotcha.
yeah, it was a good weekend.
Perfect. Yeah, I had a decent weekend. Flew back up to Pennsylvania yesterday. Spent some time with my brother and sister-in-law. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, I don't want to imply that either one of those people are actually related to me to start. Love them to death, but I don't have a brother or a sister. Spent some time with them and my niece, so that was a good time.
Wait,
and now
I'm an idiot.
What?
I was going to ask how you have a brother or sister-in-law without a brother or sister, and then I remembered you're married.
Yeah. I mean, technically speaking, this is my stepbrother and stepsister-in-law, but that just sounds preposterous, and we're all grown adults. So, it's just my brother and sister-in-law. They've been married for a while, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Lots to talk about today, though, man. I like this slate. This is we kind of talked about this, I don't know, probably the last time that we did a show. I don't really remember. That this is probably like the perfect slate size, and I'm excited to like break down a slate where clearly you are like sort of playing everybody, but there's more intricacy in stacks and leverage becomes a little bit more interesting because pitching exposures get a little bit higher. So I think we actually have a lot to break down.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fun talking about slates of this size. Like when they're shorter, they're fun to talk about, but it's more so just like it's a lot of, oh, well, I don't like this spot, but also nobody else does, so I'll just play them. And then when it's the bigger slates, it's just so much more straightforward. So yeah, I enjoy talking about these as well.
Yeah, this is kind of the best balance for MLB. I'm getting myself logged back into Stokastic.com. Awesemo.com has gone by the wayside. If you type it in, don't worry, you'll still end up in the exact same place that you should. But we need to talk a little bit. I got to grab this updated ownership. I got to grab top stacks. But I think we can get into it right out of the gate. Ooh, am I logged in already?
I was told you were ready for the show.
Well, Adam, I rarely am. I'm that good that I can be not ready. And it's still like nobody can ever even tell. It's crazy like that, except for at this moment right now where I'm just continuing to talk and ramble just so that I can get the top stack tool pasted into my sheet.
Yeah, and one of the biggest compliments I've gotten in this industry was the time that I was cutting it very close to a show. And Greg suggested that they have someone fill in because I wasn't going to have time to prep. And I think it was Jordan was just like, yeah, that's not an issue.
Oh, you mean every day?
Right. Yeah, the only difference that day was I was stuck in traffic, not that I hadn't rolled out of bed yet.
I can't believe Randone won $1 million yesterday again.
Yeah, congrats to him on his probably like 20% equity in Tanner's lineups.
I bet he okay, what do you think's bigger? Randone's share of Tanner's lineups or Tanner's share of Randone's book proceeds?
Of what?
Let's not forget Chris Randone, published author.
Yeah, forgot about that. So I think for sure it's his stake in the lineups is probably very silent. He's not allowed to input at all into what is played.
You would think.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll take the percentage of lineups that he's involved in over Tanner's part of his book.
There we go. All right, here we go. Let's kick it off. Pirates and Cubs. Coin flip game here. It's like, 4 runs to 4 runs. JT Brubaker going for the Pirates. Caleb, I'm going to say that it's Killian. I can't imagine that because of it.
I don't know if it's right.
Yeah, assuming that the K sounds like a K, we're going to go Killian. I don't know.
What are the alternatives here?
I don't know. Kalayan. Like I've never seen I've never seen that words. I've never seen that word spelled like that. Like I would have expected maybe an extra L.
Right.
Not extra L, but like the second L. So I don't know if that changes the way like the rest of the vowels sound.
Yeah. It reminds me of people sitting behind me at the O's game yesterday. They saw Mountcastle's name, on the scoreboard. And I'm pretty sure they thought it was just like a fake name. Like based on the tone in their conversation, it was like they like didn't believe that his name was actually Mountcastle because like that's a really random name. I think they just thought it was some like maybe there was like a weird joke or something.
Weird. Well, we'll go with Killian here, who is unowned at 5K. Brubaker, on the other hand, not unowned. 15% owned on DK at 6,900. 15%. I probably pasted the same ownership in FanDuel and DraftKings. We'll deal with that in a second. Not really all that interesting on FanDuel either, given the amount of high-level arms that there are today. Can't imagine paying down is going to be the strategy. Talk to me about Brubaker being in 15% of lineups. Does that seem reasonable to you?
I think it seems reasonable, just given that it is a pretty decent price tag for him. 6,900, certainly not overly expensive. The matchup against the Cubs, there's plenty of strikeout upside here. You're getting them outside of Wrigley, so it's not like we have to be concerned with a win game or anything like that, like we've seen recently. And Brubaker's not a great pitcher. He has a 4.24 xFIP this year, but he does have a 22.3% strikeout percentage. The strikeout upside's decent. And when you get him at that price tag, I think it makes some sense. Like you said, only really on the two pitcher site, but there's not a whole lot in terms of pay down guys that look good. There's certainly a couple of other spots you can get to. But I understand why he's getting ownership here.
So do I. Definitely think he should be getting a little, to me, maybe like a little bit over-owned, but I think he's pretty, maybe not pretty clearly. There's, one other option for pay down options that I might like as much, but I think he is the guy that stands out most, even just below Yu Darvish, which we'll definitely get into. Any Caleb Killian for you?
I mean, he's a highly regarded prospect. We don't have much time in the majors yet, and he's been god-awful in those limited games. But it is a good matchup against the Pirates. He is only 5K. I am surprised he's not getting any ownership.
How deep can he go in the game? Is it 5 innings? Or should we be expecting him to go any deeper than that?
So, I mean, in 10 starts at AAA, he was averaging 4.3 innings per game.
Okay. 5 is probably like the realistic upside.
4 to 5 seems like a reasonable expectation, assuming he's pitching reasonably well.
Okay. That's probably what's keeping him down. Like I didn't get to much, and I'm not all that surprised by it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really comes down to, do you need the savings?
Right.
I mean, but the thing is, like, he can still beat Brubaker just.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I would expect him to be a little bit higher than 1% owned, I guess.
Okay.
But the lack of ownership going to these cheap pitchers does kind of just suggest that from a roster construction standpoint, you don't need it.
Yeah, and we are loaded at the top. There are 4 big time arms in the 9Ks, 4.5 if you want to add Berrios. We could add, like, I love Yu Darvish today. We could have that conversation too.
But like,
there's a lot else out there of like guys that can break slates.
Yeah, so I guess the way I would put it right now is like, if you need to pay down, I think Killian's fine at 5K. But just looking at our ownership projections right now, obviously I haven't crunched lineups yet, but like the fact that Chris Bubich at 6,100 is only getting 1%. Josh Winkowski against the Tigers is only getting 1%. Syndergaard against Kansas City at 6,400 is only getting 6%. It just suggests to me that it's really easy to get to those top-end pitchers.
Yep, I agree. And I don't think there's all that much difference between all of those guys that you're naming. Like whether you like Killian or Bubich or Wink or like, I don't really have like a huge take. I think they're all basically the same guy.
Right. That was kind of my point, was like, it would be one thing if if Syndergaard was projected for 20% ownership and Winkowski was at 20% and Killian was at like 2%, it would be more of like, okay, this is weird. Like, clearly you're using these cheap pitchers. Why aren't more people going to Killian? But it kind of just seems like there's no need to really use those cheap pitchers.
Let's talk a little bit about bats here. This is a very interesting setup for me, at least based on the lineup that I had. We have the Cubs with the 3rd most ownership, 4th in our top stack tool. Remember, there's 8 games, so there's 16 teams on the slate. They are 4th in top stack odds, 3rd in value. I think this Cubs offense looks awful today. I have them 7th in top stack, 8th in my just general score. I'm curious where you lean here. Obviously, they're very affordable, and that's going to help me get to the Coles and McClanahans and Burns of the world. But I have their aggregate weighted runs created plus at 101 for today, which is the lowest of any team on the slate. So what am I missing, or are you with me?
Okay, so I agree with you. The Cubs aren't very good. How do you have the Cubs WRC plus lower than like Detroit and Kansas City and Pittsburgh?
Tigers I have at 102. Kansas
them,
City.
like, new players?
So, I mean, I'll read it off. This is the lineup that I have in for the Cubs right now. Morel is 104, Contreras 118, Ortega 97, Happ 117, Wisdom 95, Herner 105, Hayward 95, Rivas 95, Simmons 78. That's just what I have in there right now. So like that could bump up.
That's fine. My bigger question is like how you have like the Tigers active roster has a 75 WRC plus. So like having their projected lineup at 102 seems like a massive jump.
Victor Reyes 104, Castro 92, Grossman 103, Miggy 99, Baez 96, Riley Green 120, Torkelson 116, Scope 105. Okay, they're all basically the same.
Throwing the whole thing off.
Not really, because it's weighted by your spot in the order, and I have him hitting 6. So like he's not even getting a big bump from plate appearances. Like he's less than 1/9 of that equation.
Right, but if you just throw a 120 into that lineup, it's going to pull the average up closer to 100.
Yeah, like let's just say I make Riley Green 100. Tigers go from 102 to 99.
Okay.
If we want to like just do it like that.
I'm guessing you have Candelario at like 165 or something.
I don't even have him in the lineup.
Okay.
It's a safe bet. Ultimately, like I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the Cubs today.
Yeah, and to be clear, neither am I. Sean V said Cubs offense is absolutely anemic right now. I agree with Josh. I'm not arguing that the Cubs offense is better than Josh thinks. I'm arguing that Detroit and Pittsburgh and Kansas City, particularly Pittsburgh and Detroit, are worse than Josh thinks.
Yeah, so I have Pittsburgh 8 points higher in WRC plus today.
I mean, they're the 3rd worst offense in baseball this year.
I mean, like this is just
87 WRC.
This begs the question, like, how much weight should that carry?
A decent amount. I mean, and like individually, their lineup. I don't. Obviously, you have the numbers in front of you. I don't, but like, so they called up O'Neal Cruz. He's a top prospect. Brian Reynolds is good. Hayes is good. Vogelbach's whatever.
O'Neal Cruz today, if he leads off for the Pirates, is the best play on the slate.
I agree with that.
2K shortstop outfield eligibility and potentially the leadoff spot. Like
kind of, he's as close
the
to
first
like
thing you're putting into
value
cash
square as you get in MLB.
Yep, totally agree. Well, let's talk about the Cubs then.
To get back to the Cubs, even though I disagree with you on them being worse than Detroit and Pittsburgh, I still think it's kind of strange that they have the 4th highest top stack percentage here. The only thing I can really point to, I guess, is that when you look at the teams below them, most of them are either really bad, like Pittsburgh or Detroit, or they have bad matchups. Like Atlanta's facing Logan Webb, the Yankees are facing McClanahan, Arizona's facing Darvish, Tampa Bay's facing Cole, San Francisco's facing Fried, the White Sox are facing Barrios. So I guess that's kind of how you get there, where the Cubs are not, at least to me, as bad as Detroit and Pittsburgh. They're facing a pitcher that's clearly worse than a lot of the other pitchers on the slate. So I guess that makes some sense, but I'm with you as far as not really thinking the Cubs are particularly good.
Yeah, I'm not. I just don't see it. Like clearly you're getting the Cubs. It's that kind of slate, and like I'm not trying to run away from JT Brubaker, but the fact that he's got 15% ownership is certainly a helpful little bump to the Cubs too. I just don't see anything on the Cubs side that is really interesting to me. It's not a lineup that has a ton of power. In particular, if my lineup has to be right or happens to be right, 6, 7, 8, 9 of Herner, Hayward, Rivas, Andrelton, Simmons is like completely devoid of power. Highest projected ISO at a steamer, and those guys 0.136 for Hayward, which is dreadful. If this lineup changes, maybe that's what drives the Cubs up quite a bit higher. That's. We'll have that information by the time you and I run back the deeper dive, but I see myself being lower on the Cubs and lower on the Pirates, who are our 2nd biggest top value stack. This is just another one where Reynolds and Hayes are at 4K. Everybody else is in the 2Ks, other than Cruz, who's like clearly that's not the correct price for a leadoff hitter with those eligibilities. I'm probably slightly more interested in the Pirates than I am the Cubs.
Yeah, and just to kind of round out the Cubs, looking at Brubaker, he'll give up power to righties, but his biggest weakness has been left-handed power, which isn't really surprising. The only left-handed power bat that exists on the Cubs is Ian Happ. So, if you're looking for a one-off, I guess that's who would really stand out. From the Pirates side, I'm with you. I don't really like getting to the Pirates either, but you do have some really favorable pricing. You have an unknown in Caleb Killian, who, he's a good prospect, but he's made 2 major league starts. At AAA this year in his 10 starts, he struck out 25.7% of hitters, but you could certainly see a learning curve coming to the majors. Cruz looks like a great value. Reynolds is good. Hayes is fine. Vogelbach's really cheap. Chavez is really cheap. Sawinski's really cheap. Don't know anything about 7, 8, 9 on this team, not going to lie. But 1 through 6, it's not a good lineup, but it's at least competent enough at their price tags where at lower ownership, I'm interested.
I actually have the Cubs or the Pirates as my third most exposed team in this particular moment. Not that I give a shit about that at 11, 18 a.m.
That really speaks to the slate, I think. Just
yeah.
like I was saying with the Cubs, this is a slate where, for the most part, if you're a good offense, you're facing a good pitcher. So you're either going to be taking bats against pitchers that you don't really want to take bats against, or you're going to be taking guys that can't really hit.
And to be fair, a lot of that exposure is going to O'Neal Cruz. If he's 13% owned, I'm going to have more than that. And I'm just going to take my chances. Yeah, I'm just going to take my chances. Is there anything else we should like specifically touch on here for Pirates Cubs? It's a weird game.
Yeah, it is, because it's like 2 of the weaker pitchers, at least in terms of what you can be confident in them doing at the major league level at this point, and also 2 of the weaker offenses. I guess just to recap on O'Neal Cruz, one of the top prospects in baseball, Pittsburgh's top prospect. They finally called him up at AAA this year. 55 games, 247 plate appearances, 12% walk percentage, 22.5% strikeout percentage, 190 ISO. Steamer projects him for a 207 ISO in the majors. This guy has no business being $2,000.
Nope, not at all. And he gets the benefit of having an MPE, which is nuts. Shortstop too.
Right, exactly.
Which is probably where he'll end up in most builds.
I obviously haven't built a cash lineup. I'd be really surprised if 2K O'Neal Cruz at shortstop is not the cash play.
It's if he leads off, it's impossible for him to not be in the cash lineup. Like right, I'm comfortable saying that.
He's either going to be in the outfield or at shortstop.
Yes. If you build a cash lineup without O'Neal Cruz, you should never play DFS again. Red Sox and Tigers. Now we could talk a little bit about offense. 5.4 run implied total for the Red Sox is the highest on the slate. 4 for the Tigers. It's Josh Winkowski and Alex Fado. Fado, no ownership. Wink, no ownership. Are you rostering pitchers here? I assume Wink is the more likely option.
Yeah, Winkowski's certainly the more likely option. He's going up against a bad Detroit offense. Their active roster has the worst WRC plus by a massive margin. It's at 75. They have a sub 100 ISO on their active roster. They have a 24.3% strikeout percentage. This was a team that earlier in the year I thought might actually be somewhat surprising offensively, but my God, they've been bad. Riley Green at 2,100 is another just completely mispriced top prospect. He's someone I think you can get to, but if I'm getting to one of the pitchers, Winkowski is the one that certainly looks better.
I think it's easier here to talk about offense. Let's go to the highest ranked team we have in the top stack. Well, highest ranked in this game, top stack score. That would be the Detroit Tigers. No, is what I would like to say. I certainly have the Red Sox ahead. Red Sox are number 1.
And Tigers have they do have the highest. What? Oh, because of the value.
Yeah. So the Red Sox are the highest in our top stack percentage. The Tigers are highest in our stack score, which incorporates value, because the Tigers are free today. There is no impediment whatsoever. Javier Baez at 4,100 is your most expensive guy in the lineup. Then you drop down to $3,100 Harold Castro.
The Angels are higher, by the way.
In stack score, they're 1. Yeah, I said Tigers were highest in this game.
Oh, okay.
I stumbled over those words, so you shouldn't be surprised that you heard me incorrectly. I didn't say it well. How do we manage this? Because they're not getting any ownership. Like in theory, I don't know what to do with the Tigers because they look awful.
I do like the lack of ownership.
So do I.
The fact that they're cheap and there's really good pitching to pay up for on this slate, and then also it's a pretty decent matchup against Winkowski. Like he's certainly one of the more questionable pitchers on this slate so far in his very, very limited sample in the majors. 223 expected ISO to lefties, 120 to righties, but that's it's like 140 total pitches. So you shouldn't really read into that. I think it's more so just to highlight that we don't know what this guy is. He projects to not be nearly as good at the major league level as he was at AAA, at least right now. And with the Tigers, they're cheap. You do get a top hitting prospect in Riley Green at 2,100. He's only 6% owned. That looks good in tournaments. If you wanted, not that you have to, like you can certainly play them together, but if you wanted to use, Riley Green at half the ownership of O'Neal Cruz, that makes a ton of sense in tournaments. Baez has been awful, but he's only 4,100. The most popular guys on this team are Reyes and Grossman at like 10 to 12% owned. So I do like the fact that they're not getting much ownership here. They are really cheap, and they are facing a relative unknown in Winkowski.
Yeah, they're certainly easy to get to. The Red Sox on the opposite side, though, we're talking about the second most owned team, and that's creating a ton of negative leverage. They are my number one team. I completely agree with it. It's certainly an offense that I want to try to get to, and I don't think it's going to be all that problematic to do so. How do you think you're going to manage the Red Sox given their current ownership numbers?
I think it's pretty tough because, I think that they deserve the ownership that they're getting, or they deserve to be one of the most popular teams, I should say. But they're also not a great value. They're projected to be overowned. Like when you look at the two teams pulling the most ownership right now between Boston and the Angels, they have similar top stack percentages, they have similar ownership, but the Angels are just so much better in terms of value that typically if I'm going to get to one of them, I'm going to get to the Angels because I'm going to be able to build better teams around them than I am Boston. So it's not a knock on Boston. I think it's a good spot against Faedo. I think that the Red Sox offense is certainly good, but the way ownership and everything looks right now, I think that if I'm going to one of the popular offenses, I'm just more likely to take the one that lets me build better lineups around them in the Angels.
I think that makes some sense. I'm going to end up having them both, but they're relatively comparable today.
Yeah,
just a very different. It's a very different build for the Red Sox and Angels because of the way that Trout and Ohtani just simply separate from the rest of the team.
Right, and both teams are similar too in that, for the most part, the team as a whole is relatively popular. There's two or three hitters on the Angels, sub 10%. On the Red Sox, it's Franchy Cordero at 9%, Jackie Bradley at 6%. Devers leading the way at 29% makes a ton of sense. Bogarts is next at 21. Story's about 20. So, I think these teams are pretty clearly the top two offenses. It's just the way that the value versus ownership shakes out right now. I think I'll probably get to the Angels first.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on in this game?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't have anything else either. Best Red Sox bat, best Tigers bat.
Best Tigers bat, I think, is Riley Green. Best Red Sox bat, I mean, it's either Devers or Duran, depending on how you want to, like if you need a value bat or the best bet.
That's fair. All right, let's talk a little bit about schedule for the rest of the day, and we'll talk a little bit about free content for today. Schedule's easy. So we've got 3:45 p.m., the Best Ball Mania Monday. Going to be looking at the NFL. Adam and I are back for the MLB Deeper Dive at 5. And then we've got MLB Live Before Lock at 6. Running low on sports right now on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. That's for sure. Once golf comes back, you get a little bit more like thought process, but we're in the deepness of the baseball season. And if you're playing baseball, and I assume if you're watching or listening to this MLB strategy show that you're playing MLB DFS today, our player projections are free. I assume that's what everybody would want to be free if they could come to the site and get it. So if you want to play and you want to check out what we have behind the paywall from a projection standpoint, today is the best day to do it because our MLB projections will cost you nothing. Just go to Stokastic.com to get them. Next game up, we're talking pitching
Did you
here.
see Jordan's response in chat? I didn't see who Sean V was talking about, but Jordan replied and said, "Why is he playing so well? He must be from a lot of places."
That's great. It's about Ian Happ feasts in his hometown of Pittsburgh. Evidently,
Okay, well, so I had seen him say that. I didn't know if Jordan's response was about Hap or not, but yeah.
Evidently. Rays and Yankees, 3.1 run implied total for the Rays, 3.4 for the Yanks. Shane McClanahan, Garrett Cole. Both offenses are really good. However, this is a pitching matchup. McClanahan, 10-3 on DK, 11-2 on FanDuel. He's 30% and 12% owned, respectively. Garrett Cole, 10-5 on DK, 10-3 on FanDuel. He is 37 and 30% owned, respectively. This is clearly a big-time pitching matchup. I'll ask you this first question, generically speaking. Do you have a preference between these two guys?
It's really close.
I agree.
McClanahan's got the better strikeout stuff. Cole's got the better matchup. I don't have a strong preference. McClanahan's getting a little bit less ownership.
Yeah. To me, this is a coin flip between the two of them. I don't really care which one I get to more or less. I have them as basically identical given the slight change in salary. I don't know how to look at this other than I'm going to have a lot of Shane McClanahan and Garrett Cole, and I don't really have a preference which one shows up where.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to talk about because it's the flip side now of what we were talking or what I was talking about with the offenses. There's a lot of really good pitchers and they're facing good offenses. When you look at these top end guys, do I feel great about Garrett Cole against Tampa Bay? No, not really, but it's still Garrett Cole. Certainly don't feel great about McClanahan against the Yankees, but he's been like the best pitcher on the slate this year. But then you look at the alternatives. Corbin Burns is facing St. Louis. That's a tough matchup. Freed's got San Francisco. Darvish has a little bit easier matchup with Arizona, but he's not nearly the same level pitcher as these other guys. So there's certainly a kind of but sentence for all of these top end pitching guys. But it does sort of just make everything come out in the wash. They're all in similar situations. So sure, McClanahan has a tough spot with the Yankees, but so do Cole, so does Burns, so does Fried. So it kind of just makes them all go back to looking like they normally would, like if they were all in good spots.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had more to ask you here, but clearly you're playing Shane McClanahan. Well, there's nothing stopping you right now from playing a bunch of Shane McClanahan and Garrett Cole. Who knows where leverage and sorting your lineups and shit shakes out, but you're expecting to get McClanahan and Cole pretty heavily.
Yeah.
30+% ownership to both of them makes complete sense.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, because there's not a really strong mid-range of pitchers here either. You have Barrios, you have Darvish, Webb facing Atlanta, but it's not like it's one of these slates where you have Dylan Cease against the Tigers at 8,200, and you're going to be able to use him to really pull ownership away from the top end guys.
What do we do about the bats here? This is the second least and least owned teams. There are dead last teams in top stack, basically. Does this become a play where they obviously both of these offenses look more interesting than the ownership we're showing has because of the additional leverage you get from the other pitcher being 30-something% owned. It's not likely, but I like them more than unowned bats on both sides. That said, can you get here?
The Yankees in particular, I mean, Tampa Bay is just sort of a middle of the road offense. So you can certainly still get there and, just hope that you get one of those games where Garrett Cole is giving up 3 or 4 home runs and striking out 10 guys, and the Rays bats, still help you win. But anytime the Yankees aren't popular, they're going to be appealing to me. You have an offense or an active roster that has a 199 ISO, leads the league in WRC plus, has massive power. So it's not like we're talking about one of these teams that, or one of these offenses that is productive, but it's mostly, just singles and doubles. I mean, the Yankees can just win any slate so easily because they have so much power in their lineup. So getting to them is pretty much always going to be appealing. And then also looking at McClanahan's numbers, obviously he's been really, really good, but expected ISO to lefties this year, 161 compared to a 0.081 ISO. Expected ISO to righties, 162 compared to a 127 ISO. That's still good, but it's suggests that he has at least been getting a little bit lucky. Now this game is in Tropicana Field, so that's probably Tropicana is probably a big reason why you're seeing that gap in expected numbers. And so this game being in Tropicana Field, it's not particularly likely to turn around now either. But the main point here just being the Yankees offense has such a ridiculously high ceiling that I'm pretty much always willing to get to them at low ownership.
Yeah, I think I would be leaning a little bit more towards the Yanks as well. I just don't know how much I'm going to be able to even get to either one of these teams. I'm just going to have so much, one, McClanahan and Cole, and two, I think I'm just going to be able to get to, we're talking about implied run totals that are 2 runs off of some of the other offenses here. It's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah, I mean that's why I lean toward the Yankees. It's just like obviously all teams are capable of just putting up really big games, but like the Yankees' extremely good game is just like otherworldly compared to most other teams.
Very
So like
true.
even if their median is low, their the tails for the Yankees are just so extreme.
Anything else, Rays and Yanks? I don't have to ask you for individual bats. If you want to try to buy an individual home run, feel free to grab Aaron Judge.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of to me either team. It's more so just stacking and hoping that you get the one out of Cole's probably going to have like 4 or 5 bad starts this year. McClanahan's probably going to have a few bad starts. You're just hoping to run into one of those.
Yep. On to game number 4. Braves and Giants, 4.4 run implied total for the reigning, defending, undisputed champions of baseball, the Atlanta Braves. 3.6 runs for the San Francisco Giants. Max Fried and Logan Webb going in this one. Fried, 20% owned. He basically hit my number on the dot. Logan Webb, 10% owned. I had him at 12. I don't have too much else to add here. Certainly like to get to Fried, certainly like to get to Webb. I just don't see those guys. I think they're like a half step behind Cole, McClanahan, Burns, and Darvish for me.
Yep, I agree with that. But they are both still good pitchers. They're also a little bit less expensive. 8,400 on DraftKings for Fried, or for Webb, 9,500 for Fried. Atlanta does have a lot of strikeouts in their lineup, in addition to having a lot of power. Webb generally is able to avoid home runs. This is a negative park shift for him though going into Atlanta. Fried similarly very good at getting soft contact. He has only struck out 23% of hitters, but that's still the 4th highest on the slate because you have McClanahan, Burns, Cole, and then just like a ridiculously big drop off in strikeout percentage. So it makes both of these guys look like solid options, but like you said, just kind of a step behind the top 3 that are all striking out 30+% of hitters this year.
Yeah. Do you have a preference between the two? I know they're like sort of different, with Fried being $1,100 more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just whichever fits in the lineups. I think Fried looks a little bit better, but he's also $1,100 more expensive. He's also getting twice the ownership.
Okay. We're on the same page there. From an offense perspective, this is not a place where people are going. The Braves are 12th in ownership. The Giants are 14th. Neither one of these teams show up in our stack score in the top 9. Giants land at 10. I would prefer to get to the Braves. I don't think that should be any sort of crazy take. I have them in the middle of the pack. I don't really have much of the Giants. I don't think that this is a game. I actually don't think that I'm going to get a lot of this game in general, whether that's Fried, whether that's Webb, whether that's Braves offense, whether that's Giants offense. This just feels like a game where I'll have a scatter shot and not much else.
The other thing that makes this difficult is San Francisco against left-handed pitching. Like you're just expecting them to start a lineup where they end up pinch hitting for like 3 guys later in the game. And so not that you want to double count it. Greg and I had talked about this on Saturday. Any good projections are going to factor in that San Francisco's that the pinch hit risk for these platoon guys on San Francisco is very high. So you don't want to just like automatically say like, oh, well, I'm not playing Austin Slater. Like his projection factors in that he's going to get less at bats than other guys. But it's still, it's still there when you think about the ceiling for this team. And then for Atlanta, it's interesting. Like Logan Webb, he pitches in San Francisco, so there's always the chance that his power numbers are just being artificially suppressed. But his ISO numbers this year are actually like exactly or very close to exactly in line with his expected ISO numbers. He's allowed a 175 ISO to lefties, a 178 expected ISO. He's held righties to a .058 ISO. His expected ISO is just shy of 100. So he's just been ridiculously good at limiting power and expected power to righties. And while Atlanta does have a ton of power, the only left-handed power in this lineup is Matt Olson. So Matt Olson one-off, I think, looks very good. But other than that, it's just like you can certainly stack Atlanta. They have a ton of power. They have the highest ISO in the league on their active roster at 209. That's perfectly fine. But in terms of, what you're expecting, if Logan Webb is on his game in any way, shape, or form, it sets up as a really good lineup for Webb to face.
Yeah, that I don't disagree with. Matt Olson one-off, certainly not going to be much of a problem there. Yeah, ultimately, I think this is just going to be a game that I don't even notice happens. I'm going to have very, very little of it across the board. And I hope it's not one. I hope it doesn't go crazy either direction. One of the pitchers with big time strikeout numbers or some, outlier offensive performance. I got nothing else here.
Yeah, I guess to reiterate, the current, or to add on, The current ownership on Logan Webb, I think, is really appealing. He's only projected for 10% on DraftKings. He's 8,400, 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, facing a right-handed heavy, strikeout heavy lineup. Yes, it's a risky spot, but I do think there's a pretty high ceiling for Webb here, and he's not getting the ownership he deserves.
I think that's a good point. All right, folks, let's talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be Prize Picks. I'm going to pull it up right now. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple questions while we go. They are the presenting sponsor of this show. They're the presenting sponsor of The Process, which I recorded earlier today. Took a look at PGA results and today's MLB contest. DraftKings deep in the micro week, so you want to check those contests out. But now let's talk Prize Picks.
Thank God.
And you don't have to work.
Bankroll a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. We are not worried about sharks, optimizers. You're playing against yourself, basically. These are parlay cards. You can make 5 picks, net up to 10x your entry fee. You can do this across sports, whether that's highlight, cricket, if you know anything about those things. Obviously, we can get into some baseball.
I knew one
picks.
of those was a sport.
Highlight?
Yeah.
Do you know what highlight is?
Seafood dish.
I don't know what you're thinking of, but no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Delicious. Highlight, hard ball. Think of it like a lacrosse stick, but it's like looped like a banana, and you can sling the ball like 100 and something miles per hour. If you remember an old Jackass episode, they all stood against the wall and got hit with highlight balls, which is like incredibly dangerous. Don't ever do that, people. But paella, delicious. Anyway, Prize Picks. Promo code still Awesemo. I understand that could be confusing for you guys right now, but the promo code is still Awesemo. Get a 100% match deposit bonus of up to $100. So if you put in 50, they give you 50. If you put in 100, they give you 100. If you put in 200, you still only get 100. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple pitching fantasy scores here. Remember, FanDuel scoring. We just got done talking about Max Fried and Logan Webb. How do you feel about Max Fried at 33.5 fantasy points?
Slight over. I think it's close, though.
I have him at 33.4, so I basically stuck the landing.
Yeah, we have him at 34.9, which, seems fine.
Logan Webb, 30.5.
I like the over there. We have him at 31.3, but I think I'm even a little bit higher, just given the massive strikeout upside that he's going to have against Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit lower on Logan Webb. I was a little surprised to see that. So we'll hit that in a second. Let's check off the other major boxes here with the 2 big arms. That's going to be Shane McClanahan, who's at 38.5.
That's high, I think.
That I agree. Garrett Cole, 41.5.
That's high for sure.
I want to take the under on Garrett Cole there. Not that it's going to feel good, but that seems excessive. I'd like to know where that ends up. So people keep an eye on that. We'll see if it's still 41.5 when we get to the deeper dive. Let's get to game 5. Thank you, Prize Picks, by the way. Brewers hosting the Cardinals, 4.3 run implied total for the Brew Crew. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to get a chance to say this because they're not on this slate. I think it was this morning, but it could have been last night. I head downstairs. My dad's just sitting in the living room watching some TV. He's like, Josh, who are the Guardians? And I was just like, they're the old Indians, Dad. I could see how you missed that one. I was like, you know how the Redskins are now the Commanders?
Yeah.
Same deal here. He's just like, I couldn't figure it out. We're getting Corbin Burns here for the Brewers. Miles Michaelis coming off of the near no-no in his last start. Don't chase that one. Doesn't appear the public is. 1% owned. 37% ownership, however, for Corbin Burns, which I basically totally agree with. I don't see him as all that different than Cole and McClanahan. You know, the extra savings getting to 9,900 certainly helps. Are you treating Burns any different than Cole and McClanahan?
No, looks about the same. I'm going to just be paying attention to how the ownership shakes out between those guys. Burns is a little bit less expensive, so that's nice. But very difficult lineup to strike out in St. Louis. Very good offense in St. Louis. Pretty similar, I think, to Cole and McClanahan.
Yeah, I know I'm going to get all 3 of these guys. I did run like a dummy crunch earlier, and Cole, Burns, McClanahan are 3 of my 4 most exposed pitchers. I don't really see any other way that that's going to go for me. Michaelis, he chasing?
It's fine. So 7,800 against Milwaukee, a team that has plenty of strikeouts. Michaelis is another one where, like, if he's going to be 1% owned, I don't mind getting there, but I also just don't think you're going to need to get to these mid-range mediocre strikeout pitchers all that often. Sean
Yeah.
V did also actually have a salient point in chat that Michaelis is coming off of a game where he threw 1,000,000 pitches last time out. That's not, you don't want to just like grab a point like that and just say like, oh, I'm Xing this guy out, I'm not playing him. But it does hurt him. It's he's that much more likely to struggle in this start after throwing as many pitches as he did last start. He's also somewhat more likely to just not get the benefit of the doubt as far as leash goes. Those are just both things that you see happen after a pitcher throws a ton of pitches, chasing a no-hitter. They kind of try and reel him back in pretty frequently. So it's not to say he can't have a good start. You shouldn't just be like slashing his projection or anything, but it is a slight negative in, as far as Michaelis goes.
He is like one of the least likely pitchers for any of that stuff to matter, though, too. The way that he pitches is like tailor-made to throw more pitches.
Yeah. And also like, keep in mind, this is somebody that can throw a lot of pitches. This isn't a guy that normally throws 80 and then they let him go out there and throw 129 last game. His last 4 starts, 115, 107, 85, but that was 8 innings. So it wasn't like he was pulled because of pitch count or something. And then 129. So like, yes, it's a lot. Yes, I would like him slightly more if he'd only thrown 100 pitches last game. But this is somebody that, he's not a really hard thrower. He is accustomed to throwing a lot of pitches. It's unlikely that it matters. It's just more likely that it matters than if it hadn't happened.
Absolutely. Offenses here. Cardinals are 14th in ownership. Brewers are 9th. They're 6th in our top stack score. I have them 5th. I don't have much else here to say. If I'm taking any side of this, I'm clearly taking Brewers bats because I don't want to take anything against Burns unless you like the leverage portion of that. When I look at my exposures right now, I'm not really getting too much of the Brewers. I'm not really getting to the Cardinals either. Is this a game where you're going for offense?
One other, Danny Green mentioned in chat that Michaelis got an extra day of rest. He did. But again, that's still just something to throw into it kind of makes me uneasy category. Like, pitchers getting an extra day of rest is not always a good thing. There's a lot of pitchers where it's just like it messes up their routine. They aren't necessarily as good. So again, it's just like, it's another variable that isn't a big deal, but it's just something to note. Like, you don't want to just necessarily look at, it's not like NBA where like you can certainly say, well, it's good that they had an extra day off in between games because now he's more well rested. Like, with pitchers, it can still just be different. So the main point is treat Michaelis basically as you would anyway. Just keep in mind that there's a little bit more kind of volatility around him here because of his last start. As far as the offenses go, though, Milwaukee's pretty interesting to me. Michaelis is good, but he's certainly not on the same level as some of these other pitchers that most of the good offenses are facing. Milwaukee's basically a league average offense in terms of production. They have a 179 ISO this year, which is nice. They do strike out a lot, but Michaelis should help mitigate that. So I am interested in getting to the Brewers at relatively low ownership. As far as St. Louis goes, they are in that Tampa Bay, New York category where I'm certainly not interested, or certainly not looking to pick on Corbin Burns. The Cardinals do have a good offense. They're unowned. If you get to some, that's fine. I would still say, though, that out of the Cardinals, the Yankees, and the Rays, the Yankees are still the ones that I prefer just because they have so much power.
Favorite Brewers bat? Is that Tellez or Yelich?
Let me see. Probably Tellez just because he's 3,800.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in this one?
Nope.
What does that sound?
Construction going on outside my apartment.
Got it. White Sox and Blue Jays. I thought somebody was trying to get. I didn't know if like Jordan had somebody in a hole in his apartment, something like that, and they're trying to work their way out. White Sox and Blue Jays, 4.2 run implied total.
In the room next door.
I don't know how I'm going to be able to continue here. Sox and Blue Jays, 4.2 run implied total for the White Sox, 4.4 for the Jays. Lance Lynn and Jose Barrios. Lynn getting 8% ownership. Barrios basically unowned. I want to run like they're clearly not in the same price point here, and guys are a little bit different, but I want more than 2.8% of Barrios here. This is a great strikeout matchup.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's. I'm looking at the wrong page. I'm surprised that he's not getting more ownership. 3% going up against the White Sox. Yeah, he's on the road, which throughout his career has been a bit of a problem for him. But you also have to keep in mind that like most of his career, he was pitching home games in Minnesota. So I don't really know
Yeah.
how much to even care about the home road splits anymore. But one way or the other, he's not getting ownership here. He's 9K. He's in a pretty good matchup against the White Sox. So I like getting him. Like if you have Max Fried getting 20%. Webb's getting 10. I already mentioned that. I think Webb's a little bit underowned. I just don't get why Barrios isn't getting more.
Neither do I. Maybe we'll see that normalize a little bit. He gets up to like 7 or 8 by the time we get to deeper dive live before lock time. What do you want to do with
He's
Lynn?
only struck out 20.5% of hitters this year, so that's down. But it's still a pitcher that we have a pretty long track record of him being, mid-20s strikeout guy. We've seen better strikeout stuff recently as well. Over his last 5 starts, 7 against the Cardinals, only 1 against the Angels, 13 against Minnesota, 5 against Detroit, 8 against Baltimore. Like he's definitely been picking up strikeouts at a better rate recently than he was earlier in the year. So even going through his starts, he kind of just has like random starts that have clearly pulled down his strikeout percentage. The one strikeout in 2 1/3 against the Angels, but he had no strikeouts in 4 2/3 against Cleveland earlier in the year as well. So I still think Barrios should be getting more ownership than he is.
What do you want to do with Lynn? Just toss him into that Killian, Bubich, Winkowski, Syndergaard bucket?
Yeah, I mean 5,800 for a pitcher that is stretched out. He threw 88 pitches last start. Is fine. I don't like the matchup. I don't think you really need to get down to that price tag, but I would say that in a vacuum, he's a little bit underpriced.
I'm just surprised that he's the most owned guy at the bottom taking on the Blue Jays. Like this is not a good spot.
Right. Agreed. I guess I don't really have a strong case for any of those other guys to be more popular. Maybe Winkowski, but I don't know.
Then we can talk about offenses. Blue Jays are 6th in aggregate ownership. White Sox are 7th, but the way that we're getting to those points are very different. Obviously, the Blue Jays are expensive, but they are 3rd in our top stack tool. I have them 2nd. This is a team that I'm trying to target, especially if Lance Lynn's going to pull any sort of ownership at the bottom. You get a little bit of extra boost from the leverage of that. I like going to Toronto.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only team or the 3rd team behind Boston and the Angels that has a double-digit top stack percentage, they are getting like less than half the ownership of those 2 teams. Certainly, Lance Lynn's a more difficult matchup than Chris Bubich or particularly Alex Faedo, but there's still a lot of power in Toronto's lineup. Not getting much ownership. I'm with you. I like getting there, especially if Lynn is going to pull a little bit of ownership himself.
Yeah. So I don't really have I'm not going to ask you who's your favorite Blue Jays bat question because it's most of the top of the order. I'm quite confident in that, and it should be. But Blue Jays are a team that I'm going to be over on. At least that's the way that it's looking right now. 4th most ownership for me.
I do wish that they had left-handed hitters.
It would help. It would certainly help. When your right-handed hitters are as good as Springer and Bichette and Vlad, I'll get over it quick.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like Lynn has. The period of time where Lynn has been good, like he's been good against lefties too, but just like absolutely lights out against righties, and then pretty good against lefties.
I don't have a ton of interest in the White Sox side of this one. Do you?
Not really. Barrios has given up power this year. He's allowed like 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. He's given up plenty of hard contact. The White Sox lineup just isn't that appealing though. If they're going to have Tim Anderson back, that's kind of interesting, but he's also really expensive. Luis Robert, Jose Abreu were fine, but overall, especially if Barrios isn't going to pull much ownership, I have a difficult time really wanting to prioritize the White Sox.
Likewise, it's just not for me. I don't see it. Where do I have them in my crunch? Yeah, they just neutral-ish. Get the power bats a little bit more. Call it a day. I'm more likely to have Barrios. So,
yeah, when looking at the ownership and looking at everything, like I prefer the Barrios spot to the White Sox spot.
Agreed. Anything else here?
Nope.
2 games to go, folks. Hit that like button if you haven't done it already. 340 people in here, 74 likes. We should easily be over 100 at this point in time. Okay, CB, whatever you say. 5.1 run implied total for the Angels.
We're just using the word trap in place of variance at this point.
Yep. Yeah. 3.8 run implied total for the Royals. Noah Syndergaard and Chris Bubich going. I get it. I guess we do shows pretty regularly in baseball, but I feel like Syndergaard and Chris Bubich are on every single slate that you and I look at.
Yeah, it feels like I have lost a lot of money on Syndergaard slates, which seems like it's been every one.
Syndergaard basically unowned, Bubich unowned. So you're assuming you'll be at like 30 to 40% Bubich?
That's been the case pretty much all season long.
Fair enough. I don't get the sense that I'm going to have any pitching in this one.
I don't think it's really necessary. If you need to pay down, I think either one is fine. Syndergaard's only striking out 16% of hitters this year, but he does do a good job keeping the ball in the park and all that, and supposedly preventing runs. I still don't totally buy into that. But, in Bubich, 17.9% strikeout percentage, 13% walk percentage. If I had to go to one of the two, I would go to Syndergaard first, but hopefully not really going to either one.
I would like to get some bats here. And apparently so would the public. Ownership on the Angels, they are number one. They're second in top stack, fourth in value, number one in our stack score. Clearly, I'm getting to some Angels today. How do you want to manage it from a leverage perspective? How do you want to do it from an ownership perspective? Because they're picking up some ownership.
Yeah, I mean, kind of already talked about it before. The value you're getting from the Angels moves them ahead of Boston for me, as long as these two teams are getting similar ownership. They have similar chances of success. One is just going to allow you to get better pitching, better one-offs around it. So as long as the ownership is similar, I'm going to prefer the Angels here. Mike Trout, Taylor Ward, Shohei Ohtani are just as good, if not better, than anything on the Red Sox, especially if you you can add Devers to that conversation, but like the Angels are such a weird offense where like half of their offense is just absolute garbage, but they have 2 to 3 guys that are just absolutely amazing in Trout, Ohtani, and then at least so far 2022 Taylor Ward. So obviously really, really like all three of those guys, and then can just mix in whatever you want from the rest of the lineup to round out your stacks. Bubich is walking a ton of guys this year, not striking guys out. Yeah, it's a good spot for the Angels.
Feels like the opposite isn't true, though. Royals are fourth in aggregate ownership, eighth in our stack score, eighth in top stack. Do you want to target your boy Syndergaard here, or the Royals just already owned enough?
So at first I was like, oh, finally Syndergaard. Well, when I first looked at ownership, I'm like, okay, Syndergaard's cheap. He's not popular. He's facing a bad offense. This is going to be the day that I get to Syndergaard and he probably gets lit up. And then I thought about it for like another 30 seconds and realized that like Kansas City has so much speed in their lineup. Any ground ball single is a triple in this game. Like that's pretty much what it is. Merrifield, Benintendi, Witt, for sure, Michael A. Taylor, Nicky Lopez, at least 5 guys in this lineup are going to be running against Syndergaard every single time there's an open base in front of them. That makes it a risky spot because he, especially the way he pitches now, he relies so much on contact and weak contact and getting balls hit at fielders and all of that. If he just gets unlucky in terms of balls in play, it's going to be like getting unlucky on doubles and triples all game long. Obviously, I've said that in pretty much every start, and will say that in pretty much every start, but I think it's amplified when you talk about the speed in this Kansas City lineup. They are getting ownership though, like you said, so maybe I don't get quite as much of them as I would have previously, but it's basically, Merrifield's pulling 14%, Benintendi's at 11, Sal Perez is always a good catcher option. He's at 9%. Bobby Witt at 7% looks great to me. Like he's a clear stolen base threat every time he's on. The rest of this team is not popular. I still like getting to Kansas City.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I understand the thought process. Is Whit Merrifield your pick for to get a hit today?
I hate you.
Why do you hate me? For being right? I mean, like, it's just so easy to be right.
Shout out to Danny Green trying to lose his virginity in chat.
Danny Green? Oh. I see it. I don't have Whit Merrifield as the one of the 5 most likely guys to get a hit today.
You said you do or not?
Don't.
Yeah, I think that is reasonable. There's a lot of pitchers that are worse than Noah Syndergaard, as much as that pains me to say.
All righty. We were
Are there stolen base props on 2 spots in the show? Prize Picks, yeah.
Not right now. Sometimes like more stats show up. I don't know if they ever are on there or not. I doubt it. Although, if you're going to have home runs on there, you might as well.
Yeah. Just I don't know, bet overs on Kansas City stolen bases somewhere.
There you go. You want to close this one out?
Yes.
Let's talk about my favorite pitcher on the slate. That would be Yu Darvish. Padres 4-run implied total. Diamondbacks 3.1. Darvish for the Pods. Zach Davies for the Diamondbacks. We're not going to talk about Zach Davies unless Adam's got some really crazy take that I'm not ready for. No. Yu Darvish is 25% owned, 8,100 today. This is the guy that I want to go to. I don't understand his ownership. I had this same sort of thought like 2 weeks ago or so when he was like not getting the right ownership at this price tag. What am I missing? Why is he not owned more? He's 8,100.
Yeah, I don't really know. It's kind of like it's Barrios-esque where Darvish is only striking out 20.5% of hitters this year, but you have such a long track record of this guy getting strikeouts. 29% last year, 31% each of the 2 previous years, 27 the 2 years before that. Even if you want to argue that, Darvish has a lot of innings under his belt, he's almost 36 years old, blah, blah, blah. You're not expecting the guy to drop from 29% to 20%. The matchup against Arizona is fine. Their active roster has a 93 WRC plus, a 23.5% strikeout percentage. At this price tag, I think he's pretty clearly a strong option. The ownership that he's getting makes sense to me. The one thing that I would say is I don't think, I like Darvish here, especially at this price tag. I don't think he should be getting 2.5 times the ownership of Logan Webb. I don't think he should be getting 10 times the ownership of Jose Barrios.
I mean, to me, I think the problem there is just the top 3 guys. Not that I don't like Cole, McClanahan, and Burns, but like with Darvish being at 8,100, he's just he should naturally be pulling more ownership, and I'm surprised that he's not. Like in the combination of price and ceiling, I think that Darvish is very clearly the best pitching option on the slate.
Okay, so yeah, I could see making the case where you just play more Darvish at the expense of those top end guys that are in tough matchups. You're getting better bats. You can play Devers and Trout and Ohtani and all of these guys. That makes some sense to me. I think that if you're going that route though, you should probably be pulling up all of Darvish, Barrios, Webb at the expense of Burns, Cole, McClanahan.
Agreed. Yeah. Like I don't think Darvish's ownership is wrong, and he's the reason that Barrios and Webb are down. I think it's too much to Cole, McClanahan, and Burns to a degree. You just bring each one of those guys down like 4 or 5%. You can fill in Barrios and Webb and be a little bit more reasonable. Right. I think we see Darvish climb, but I don't know.
But also within individual lineups, just with the way things look right now, it's going to be Webb and Barrios that stand out as the guys that you can use to differentiate. Even if you do prefer Darvish, which I think is a very reasonable take, 25% is 25%. Throwing him into your lineup still isn't doing you any favors in terms of getting different, whereas a 2% on Barrios or a 10% on Webb is.
I certainly agree there. I don't have any interest in attacking or into getting to Diamondbacks bats. Do you have anything you want to say there for Arizona?
I do have some interest in the Diamondbacks just because Darvish, even when he has been good in previous years, does give up some power, especially, last year, 1.5 home runs per 9. This year, he's back down to 0.72. But you had 2019, 1.7, 2018, 1.6 home runs per 9. For his career, he's at 1.1. Mm-hmm. Steamer projects 1.3 for this season. So I do like the power upside that you get if Darvish isn't on top of his game. Arizona is not projected for much ownership. They also have one of the lowest top stack percentages, which is kind of strange to me. But I do have a little bit of interest there, just in particular getting to, Dalton Varsho as a catcher option, Josh Rojas, rather, at third base seems like a reasonable option as well.
And I find the Padres bats to be incredibly uninteresting. 10th in ownership, 11th in stack score, 12th in top stack. I have them a little bit higher than that, but they're still not a priority.
Yeah, I mean, no Manny Machado and no Fernando Tatis starts to make this lineup a little bit tougher to get to. Jake Cronenworth being $6,000 also makes it a little difficult. Jurickson Profar at $5K. Luke Voit jumped like $1,500 in price over the weekend as well. So it's not that I hate the matchup against Davies, but I do think it's a little difficult to get to these Padres price tags, especially when you don't have Machado in this lineup.
Anything else for this game?
Nope.
Let's sum it up. Favorite arms for today?
I mean, the guys at the top, I guess right now looking at the ownership, since McClanahan is the lowest, I'll say McClanahan. I like Logan Webb in tournaments. I like Jose Barrios in tournaments.
Favorite stacks?
Angels, Blue Jays, Kansas City.
All righty.
We're just doing the Syndergaard thing again. It's going to be fun.
You've got tournament plays coming up a little bit later, or are they already out?
No, they'll be out around 1 or 2.
There we go. Check out Adam's tournament plays videos, and then check Adam and I out again on the Deeper Dive at 5 p.m. tonight, where we can break this one down. We'll have a bit more information on the slate. Thank you guys for being here. Hit the like button on your way out the door, and thank you to Prize Picks for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll see you later tonight for the Deeper Dive. Adios.